Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on this Dana 44 again. Next up, we need to get the carrier and the pinion out of the center section right here. Let's get to it. First order of business is we need to drain the fluid from this. I find really useful to take an old oil container or antifreeze container, cut out one side, and you have a nice shallow pan that holds, in this case, I think a full gallon. It also gives us a nice pour spout. In my case, I'm not going to be reusing these brake lines, but you want to move it up out of the way. It's clipped onto the cover right here. There is a plug right here, but this is the fill plug. To drain it, we just need to take this cover off. To keep it from completely falling off and all the fluid going everywhere, just put one of these bolts back in at the top, not very far, just enough so that it'll hold it in place. Then use a screwdriver or gasket scraper or something along those lines to get between the housing and that cover. Then in the bottom, you can inspect. It's got a little bit of material there, but it's not too bad. It does have a bunch of rust on the inside, though. Our goal now is to get this ring gear carrier out of this differential. The first step in getting the ring gear carrier out of the differential is we have to pull the hub off of both sides of this, because we actually have to pull the axle shafts out. So we need to take these off. I've already done a video on how to do that. That I'll put a link right up here for. Once you have the hub off, then you have to take the spindle off, which is this piece here, and the backing plate. I've got a video on how to do that. I'll put that right up here as well. Once you have the spindles off, you have to pull the propeller shafts out. Now that I've got the cover off and the fluid drained, I can take this carrier out. Notice that I did take the knuckles off of this. It's off on both sides. You don't have to do that to do this. You just have to pull these propeller shafts out because they run into the carrier. Once you've pulled those out, the carrier will come out. I've got the knuckles off because I'm changing the ball joints while I'm in here. To remove the carrier, we have to remove these bearing caps. The caps are the same part number, so they're the same thing, and you can swap them physically, but if you do swap them or turn them around, you're going to have problems. They must go back in exactly as they are here. Now these ones are already marked. Over here and over here is a mark that corresponds to the mark on the cap. I'll zoom in here in a second for you. But there's a mark here and here that match, and then here and here that match. You can see this R and this R. They're facing the same direction and they're directly across from one another. Come over to this side. There's an R again, so this is not R for left and right. It's just the marking that they're used. This R is turned 90 degrees from this one. So this R matches this one. This one, it didn't hit all the way, but you can see this back of the R is the back here. And you can kind of see the legs sticking up. So they didn't stamp it real well, but that matches that. And that matches that. Those need to be exactly in that same location when this goes back together. Now that we got the caps off, we can pull the carrier out. This carrier is a very tight fit. It's an interference fit in here, so it does not want to come out very easily. You can't just grab onto it and pull it out. What we want to do is we want to rotate this so that one of these ring gear bolts is directly above here, so straight up and down. So I'm just going to rotate the yoke so this bolt is straight above the center line of the shaft here. And then I'm going to put a piece of wood on here and get a big pry bar and just pry this up. So just a chunk of 2x4. And the pry bar I have is literally 4 feet long, so I can't really show it on camera easily. We're going to get right underneath that bolt and then pry it up. Notice it lifted up right there. Now, the bearing is hitting the underside of this board, so I'll move it. And then pry some more. Doing it that way makes it really easy. Now the bearing is still caught here, so if I lift, so a screwdriver or a small pry bar underneath this, you can get it the rest of the way out. I originally hadn't planned on taking this apart, but that tells me I probably should. Next up, I'm going to take this yoke off. 2 reasons. One, I need to change that seal regardless. But second, because of that bearing in the carrier, I want to inspect the bearings on this pinion too. So I'm going to pull it completely out. To get this yoke off, we need to take this nut off. It's actually a lock nut. So you're going to need obviously a socket for it, but you need something to hold the yoke. You can use like a pipe wrench, something like that. But I've got one of these, so I'm just going to use this. Basically, we just bolt it where those U-straps are, bolt that on, and then you can put a breaker bar into one of these square drive holes, and then take the impact and remove that nut. Now I'm going to use a 2-jaw puller and remove the yoke. The pinion's in here fairly good. You can't just push it out. So I'm going to put this nut back on, run it down so that the face of the nut and the end of the pinion are even, and give it a little gentle persuasion. And then the pinion comes out. I'm going to put the nut back on here so I don't lose it. It's also very important to note that you're going to have almost certainly thrust washers here. Do not lose them. They need to go back in to keep the alignment of this correct with your ring gear. So make sure that these washers or shims stay exactly where they are. This seal needs to come out because I need to replace it, and also I'm going to replace the front pinion bearing, which is behind it, and it comes out the front here. Or I guess it's the rear. At any rate, it comes out this way. I'm going to leave that in so that I can stuff something in here and cap everything off to get this thing cleaned. I'll remove this and the bearing once the housing has been cleaned. It's probably worth mentioning at this point that the axle seals for this are right here and right here. On the rear, they're all the way out at the end at the backing plate for the brakes, but on the front, they're way inside here. These will also get replaced before I put everything back together. Otherwise, this is completely disassembled and ready for cleaning. That's it for today. Thanks for watching.